Back to the South African picture right now. According to the Adcorp Employment Index, a total of 103,327 new jobs were created in South Africa in December last year, the fastest rate of growth in 9 months. Joining us now to unpack the jobs market in South Africa, Loane Sharp, Labour Analyst at Adcorp. Loane, thank you very much for your time today. Just over 100,000 jobs added in December. Now, if you compare this to the United States, we saw 200,000 jobs added there. But of course, on a relative basis, we are a much smaller economy. Would you say then that this is an encouraging number?
Definitely it's encouraging. It's the first time since the 2009 recession that we've seen such a generalized increase in employment. Every sector reported growth, every level of occupation from low-skilled all the way through to high-skilled professionals reported growth. So it's really a positive
And in the
picture.
Holiday period,
Yes.
which is interesting.
Yes, I think a large part of it is that the consumption sectors of the South African economy are doing very well. So we saw strong growth in retail employment, financial services employment, but as I say, it was a generalized increase. Even domestic work picked up quite substantially.
What about on the manufacturing front? Because that's where we know where job losses have been quite prominent.
Yeah, manufacturing has its own particular issues. I think the global economic crisis affects our local manufacturers much more than it does the purely domestic consumption sectors. But at the same time, we've got particular labour problems in our manufacturing sector. The level of unionization in manufacturing is now well over 70%. Wage settlements in manufacturing have been very high. So at a time when global economic uncertainty is limiting growth prospects for manufacturing.
The labour unions aren't helping, and very much seen as discouraging productivity in South Africa and creation of new jobs in an area where we've seen deindustrialization take place.
Yeah. Well, the manufacturing sector has been in systematic decline for the last 30 years. In this way, South Africa behaves much more like a developed than a developing economy. Our economy is much more oriented towards services. So we have more tertiary characteristics in our economy, and that has specific requirements for the level of skill of people who can find work. The probability of finding work in South Africa within 12 months of searching, if you have just a grade 12, is about 20%. If you have an honours degree, that rises to about 80%. So the more the economy is
that is a startling number. 18% of graduates with an honours degree will find jobs. I mean,
That's
what
right.
happens to the 82%? They just, there's 600,000 estimated university graduates sitting without jobs right now.
Yeah, I think the university system has escaped political scrutiny for too long in South Africa. I mean, the universities depend on government subsidies, but they've largely operated independently. So the universities have taken a view that they will admit more arts, humanities, and social science students. And we know now that there are about 600,000 unemployed graduates in those fields. At the same time, the economy
And that's an area where South Africa isn't particularly strong. Should we be focusing on the arts and culture when we're needing skills in engineering and finance?
Yeah, well, there are over 800,000 vacancies at present in the private sector for engineers, lawyers, accountants, finance people, and so on. And the universities have just not come to the party in terms of producing the skills that the jobs market requires.
To what extent is the onus now on corporate South Africa to start taking on the responsibility of increasing the level of skills with regard to acceptable graduates, especially with the fact that you look at corporate South Africa and many are sitting with a lot of cash in their balance sheets, perhaps good use of resources.
Yeah. Unfortunately, for employers, the current economic climate is still way too uncertain for them to expand their workforces to any substantial degree. But that looks like in the next 2 years the global economy will improve, and I think those workforces should expand. Companies have very limited options. I mean, companies in South Africa used to be very significant contributors to bursary and scholarship schemes at universities.
And that has that cut back as the recession took place and the companies have been strained for resources?
Yeah, that has been cut back. It's also been cut back because government subsidies have become a much bigger source of support for universities financially. So you've had government subsidies displace private funding for tertiary education in South Africa. But at the same time, the professional bodies have a cozy little monopoly on the skills, the high skills in South Africa. Medicine, even though we have a dramatic shortage of doctors in South Africa, our medical schools are...
But isn't it so important to keep the quality of doctors at a certain level?
Well, that's the argument the professions make. They say that their mandate is to maintain standards, but I don't think that's correct. I mean, if we have a shortage of doctors and our medical schools are routinely turning away students with 6, 7, 8 distinctions in grade 12, I think there's something more at work. The university spent over 100 billion rand as a system over the last decade on people who were never ultimately employed. So the universities have the resources, but I think they just don't have the market savvy to be directing students into business relevant qualifications.
And perhaps also fitting them with the actual skills that they need in the workplace. Loane, we're going to have to leave it there for today. Thank you very much for those insights. Loane Sharp, Labour Analyst at Adcorp, unpacking the local jobs market here in South Africa.